Hello, today I'm reviewing the A4-H2O, which is a collaboration between Lian Li and DEANZ cases. It's based on the DEANZ A4-SFX, but has been optimised for water cooling. And at only 11 litres, it's one of the smallest cases on the market today that can accommodate both a 240mm AIO and a triple slot GPU. The A4-H2O is available in two colours, matte black and the silver colour that I have here. Both colours are available in two different versions with a Gen 3 and a Gen 4 riser cable. In terms of pricing, the version with the Gen 3 riser cable will set you back $129.99, while the version with the Gen 4 riser cable will set you back an additional $35 at $164.99. The A4-H2O features four removable aluminium panels. The one on the top is 2mm thick, while the ones on the side and the front are 1.5mm thick. Taking a look at the case's front I/O, we've got a single USB Type-A and single USB Type-C connector. We've got separate headphone and microphone jacks and a power button. All the panels are held on with push pins. The one on the front and the one on the top can simply be pulled away. While with the side panels, you need to remove 2 thumb screws per panel before the panel can simply be pulled away. At the top of the case, we've got a removable fan/radiator bracket. It's held on with 4 screws. Once these have been removed, the bracket can simply be lifted away. At the top of the case, you can fit a 240mm radiator. It is important to note that the radiator and fan's thickness needs to be 55mm or less. Alternatively, you can mount 2 120mm fans at the top. However, the maximum height for supported CPU coolers is only 55mm, so this is really going to leave you struggling to cool your CPU. The case's bottom panel is removable. There's 5 screws to remove, and then the bottom panel can simply be lifted away. Taking a look at the bottom panel, there's plenty of ventilation holes which should improve the case's airflow, and there's also a single 2.5-inch drive mounting location. The case's power supply bracket is held on with 4 screws, and it will accommodate either an SFX or SFXL power supply. Another nice feature at the top is we have a radiator cover hiding the radiator and fans. Taking a closer look at the case's internal layout, we've got a sandwich style design with the motherboard and power supply on one side and the GPU on the other side. In terms of GPU support, the A4-H2O will support triple slot cards up to a maximum length of 322mm. The case features a large cutout in the front which should help when installing large graphics cards and help reduce the risk of scratching the card. So what I want to do now is give you a closer look at the build I put together in the case. So I think you'll agree the build looks absolutely stunning, and I think it's really impressive we were able to fit such a big graphics card into such a small case. But while it looks good, we need to know how it performs. So I have done some temperature testing It is important to say that the fans on the AIO were running at the stock fan curves, and the only overclocking that was done was enabling the XMP profile on the RAM. Taking a look at the temperatures, our CPU idled at 35 degrees. It reached a maximum of 76 degrees during a 30-minute gaming session, and during a 10-minute AIDA64 stability test, it reached a maximum of 99 degrees. It is important to note that during that AIDA64 stability test, there was up to 26% throttling. Taking a look at our GPU temperatures, our GPU idled at 31 degrees. It reached a maximum temperature of 70 degrees during the 30-minute gaming session and a maximum of 69 degrees during the 10-minute AIDA64 stability test. In terms of noise levels, at idle, the average noise level was 35 decibels. This increased to 48 decibels during the gaming session and up to 54 decibels during the AIDA64 stability test. So putting those results into context, I think the GPU temperatures are excellent. This GPU in a case that is completely optimized for airflow, 3 fans under the GPU, lots of space around it, it would tend to run in the low to mid 60s. So being at 69 during AIDA64 stability test is excellent. The CPU temperatures are really what I would expect for a case of this design, and I recently did a build in the Q58 with the same CPU, and the temperatures were very similar to that. Now, I think it really depends what you're doing with the CPU, and as we've shown during the gaming testing, the CPU temperatures are very, very acceptable. During the more extreme AIDA64 stability test, the temperatures were fairly high, hitting 99, and there was significant thermal throttling by as much as 26%. So I think it depends on what you're using your PC for. If you do a lot of CPU intensive tasks, this probably wouldn't be the case for you, particularly with this powerful CPU. Alternatively, if you're going to go with a CPU that didn't run quite as hot and was a bit easier to cool, you would probably be fine. Again, if you're using your PC mostly for gaming, again, as the gaming tests show, your temperatures are going to be absolutely fine and there's going to be no throttling, and there still is a little bit of room for some overclocking. In terms of the noise levels, at idle they were probably in the moderate range, while during the gaming and AIDA64 stability test they were probably in the moderate to high range, but again fairly acceptable. And again, if you're not using your PC for that extreme tasks, you could certainly adjust the fan curves and get the noise down a little bit. In terms of the build process, building in the A4-H2O was really straightforward. MINI-ITX builds are notoriously much more difficult than building a larger case. In general, getting everything fitted in, managing the cables can be quite difficult, but actually I found building in this case really straightforward, and in fact the cable management was not that difficult at all. I think it helped that you didn't have fans down at the bottom, so you weren't having to worry about the cables getting in the way of the fan blades, and certainly with the fans on the AIO, I didn't really have any difficulty with cables going into those fan blades because I was particularly careful about how I routed them. And I think it did help plugging in as many cables into the motherboard as I could before adding extra things into the case. But really straightforward building in this case. Moving on to the things I liked about the case, I think the first thing was the design. I think this looks great, and as we've already mentioned, it was really straightforward to build in. In terms of build quality, it was excellent. I think the all aluminium panels work very well, and it really felt like you were building in a premium case. Just how all the panels came off, how everything was compartmentized, how everything was designed to go together felt really, really premium, and I really enjoyed building in the case. I don't want to list all the case's features again, but the two main features I thought worked really well in this case. One was the radiator cover hiding everything away, and the other thing I really liked was the large cutout at the front, which meant you were actually able to install a GPU that was too big to fit through the cutout at the side. So this feature, I think in particular, was absolutely brilliant. Moving on to things I didn't like about the case, and there's very little to say here, but there is two features I do think is important that I point out. The first is that there's absolutely no disk filters at all in this case. I can understand why in such a small case with such limited airflow, I would worry that adding dust filters on might significantly affect the temperatures, but I do think it is important to point this out. The second thing is the case only has one SATA SSD mount at the bottom of the case, and I think you might struggle a little bit with mounting an SSD there. When I was getting my power supply cables fitted into the case, there was very little room left, and I think having a SATA SSD down at the bottom, we would have struggled to actually get it fitted in. So summing things up, I absolutely love the A4-H2O. Building in a case of this size is normally not as straightforward as it was in this case, and it is not normally as straightforward fitting such a large graphics card into a small case. So well done to Lian Li and DEANZ cases. If you're in the market for a small form factor case, I can definitely recommend the A4-H2O. So hopefully you found this review useful. If you have, please remember to give it a thumbs up. And if you're not currently subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button as well. Thanks for watching.